Last month, and I don't know if celebration is the right word, but last month we honored the 10 years after my grandmother's death. My grandmother in Korean, who we lovingly call 할머니, which is Korean, grandmother in Korean, lived with us. And that's not atypical in the Korean culture. So for my family, my grandfather passed away before I was even born. And when I was born, my grandmother moved all the way from Korea to help raise me and then my younger sister. And so in the house was myself, eventually my younger sister, my mom, my dad, and my grandmother. And this was very common in many Korean contexts. And so growing up, I felt honored because I had a father, and I had a mother, and then essentially I had a second mother whom I called 할머니, grandmother. And so we became very tight, very close. And then, in my teenage years, she passed away. And it was one of the hardest and the most significant losses I've ever experienced. And so a couple of years ago, fast forwarding, I had the opportunity to preach, to do a pulpit supply for a church that had an evening service, and I was preaching a sermon, and I gave an illustration about the heartache and the pain of losing my grandmother. And even to this day, it's hard for me to talk about without even, feeling really emotional, let alone, just a couple of years ago, even before then. And so after I was all done with the sermon, I was tired. It was late. This isn't atypical either. People will come and want to talk to you, and I love that, by the way. But that particular night, I felt a little exhausted, and I saw from the corner of my eye an older gentleman who wanted to talk to me, come my way. And so, I was kind of packing my stuff up, very obviously, because I'm ready to go. And eventually, he caught up to me. And he shared with me, again, he was in tears telling me that just a month prior to that, he lost his wife. And so we were, at the pulpit, on the stairs, looks just like this. We were just sitting together. And we were crying together. And we were praying for and with one another. And the word that kept coming to me as I thought about that moment was this word, solidarity. At that moment, I felt a sense of solidarity between this person and myself because of this big event that both of us went through, and that we shared that painful experience with one another. And there was something sacred about sharing a big event, a sacred and a holy event like that draws people united together. And so this word solidarity came to mind. And solidarity is an interesting word because in Latin, it comes from the word solidus. And the word solidus in Latin, that means by definition something that's solid, something that's weighty, something that's valuable. In fact, in the 4th century, Emperor Constantine introduced a new coin for the Roman Empire. And it was the new currency for the day that replaced an older one. And in this new coin that he called Solidus, it was made almost purely of gold. It was beautiful. It was heavier, much heavier than the last coin that they took out. And it was just a new thing. It had so much value in that coin. So much value that soldiers for the Roman Empire would get paid 1 solidus a month for their services. Because 1 solidus, it represented about a month's worth of wages. As a matter of fact, that's where we get the word soldier from. It comes from solidus, a servant who gets paid to do their work. And so as I was thinking about that word, and the word developed, solidus, it was a coin. It meant something that was solid and weighty and valuable. And then it started to evolve into something more relational. A relationship that was set on something that was solid and weighty and valuable. And so when I think about that definition of solidarity and where it comes from, Solidus, it made sense that I was sitting there with my friend in solidarity because of this heavy and solid and so important, again, yet painful experience that we both went through together. I didn't know this person at all. In fact, as I was getting to know him, I realized we had nothing in common. And yet, as we sat at those staircases in tears praying for one another, we were in solidarity with one another. Our socioeconomic background didn't matter. Our ethnic differences didn't matter. Where we grew up and what neighborhood we lived in didn't matter. None of those things mattered. Instantly, we became brothers, and that's it. Nothing else mattered. Because of that moment that we shared, that dark and heavy and hard experience, because we shared that, instantly we became brothers and best friends. Nothing else mattered. That's solidarity. And maybe many of you have experienced this kind of solidarity as well. Maybe you and somebody, you share, like me, a painful experience that you wouldn't want or wish upon your worst enemy, and yet you share that experience with somebody, and so therefore you have solidarity. Maybe it's a joy that no one else would understand except for you in a group, or maybe yourself, you have solidarity. Maybe it's a recovery group or a support group that you guys are just struggling together but wanting to just heal and get better and be transformed. You have solidarity. Many of us, we've experienced this solidarity, in other words, a deep unity and a bond with others based on an experience or something else. And so what you might notice is that this kind of solidarity or this kind of unity can only exist when we understand that it's not something of ourselves. It's not about us. It's not something that we can produce. It's not something that we can manufacture. It becomes a gift. It's only a gift from sharing something with somebody. And the weightier that something is, the weightier the bond becomes.